Dearly beloved, we are here to talk about the movies. I am Skye Jitani. Welcome back to another episode of The Movie Proposal. I'm joined by Josh Lindsay.
Hello, everybody.
And Jason Rugg is trying to make sure this thing comes together over there.
Hello.
Hi, Jason. I have a cold. I apologize for my stuffy nose and strange voice. I have recently come back from an overseas trip. Bad news is I got a cold. The good news is I watched like 8 movies.
All right.
In my 40 hours of flying time. So one of them I'll mention at some point today. But if you're new to the podcast, we do something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. Josh, let's jump right in. What's your something old?
Okay, well, first, I got to apologize to Jason because he was right. I did mention The Mission twice in the past. So I now have a spreadsheet, so I'm tracking it, so I make sure I don't repeat.
That's more than I'm doing.
All right. But this week, my something old is Field of Dreams. So 1989, Kevin Costner, James Earl Jones.
Ray Liotta.
Shoeless Joe Jackson, the farmer who plows his field to make a baseball field.
Okay, so here's my question about that movie. Do you think if you're not a baseball fan, you still can really enjoy that movie?
Yes, because I'm not a baseball fan.
Okay.
And that's what I think is amazing about this is there's these themes. Well, first of all, I'm not a farmer. I'm not a baseball fan. There's these themes of the 1960s, peace, love, no war, all that kind of stuff.
Hippie-ish kind of stuff.
Yeah, very hippie-ish. And not interested in any of that. Can't relate to much of it, but loved the film. And so this episode for me, there's a theme of fatherhood running through these movies I'm going to be talking about. And this was the movie where I first saw my father cry. And to me, it is one of those magical where it's like as it's being pieced together, you're enjoying the ride, but you don't really get where is this going.
Mm-hmm.
When he goes and he picks up James Earl Jones, who's former hippie and author, and why is he part of this? And he gets the doc. I forget the actor's name, but they bring him to the farm, and where it all lands up is very special, very magical. Love that movie.
I liked it.
What?
I mean, I liked it. I think it's a really good movie, but I've never felt like this. Some people have like some kind of deep spiritual, emotional engagement with it. And I don't know, man, I didn't grow up watching baseball. I don't have any attachments to my dad with baseball. He thinks baseball's ridiculous. He's played cricket, it's just that kind of thing. So maybe I just didn't have that visceral American boyhood baseball attachment thing. And I know it's not just about baseball.
Yeah, because I didn't play baseball. In fact, I hated playing catch growing up. But I love my dad, and that's where the heart of it was. And
so you're saying I don't love my dad?
I'm not saying that, but
Yeah, that is the heart of the movie. It's a good movie. And what's amazing is that field in Iowa that they created for the movie.
Is it still there?
Yeah, it's like a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
Which I think is fascinating. Okay, my something old actually relates to our something new because it also stars Jeff Bridges. But it's from 1988, and it's... I really like this movie. Tucker. Remember Tucker?
Oh, yeah.
A Man in His Dream?
Yeah.
So it's...
That's right.
Let me explain.
Go for it.
So first of all, I didn't realize this. It was produced by George Lucas.
Oh.
And it was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, which I did know.
Is it a Disney film?
I don't believe so. It's about Preston Tucker, who was this entrepreneur in the 1950s who set out to create a better American car and kind of take on the big automakers in Detroit. And he's a very dynamic personality and limitless optimist. And it's kind of about how this little guy with a dream, it's all about kind of the American spirit. But then it's how big business tries to crush him because the big 3 automakers don't want this competition. And if you watch the trailer, Tucker's problem is that he built a car that was too good. And they didn't want to. And it just reminded me of a couple things kind of going on right now. One is if you follow kind of entrepreneurs right now, Elon Musk is kind of today's Preston Tucker. And he started Tesla. And like the big 3 automakers have, to this day, they still won't allow Tesla to sell or set up dealerships in Michigan because they're so threatened by his cars.
Really?
So you can kind of see history repeating itself.
Okay.
But it's a well-acted movie. It's fun. It kind of gives you a glimpse into that nostalgic period of American history. And it's like a David versus Goliath kind of story and well told. So it's a fun movie. It's safe for the whole family. It also reminded me a little bit of some of the current movie archetypes, like the Tony Stark character or even his father's character in the Marvel movies. It's very much
a dreamer and
it's a very Preston Tucker-ish kind of
smart guy
archetype. So Jeff Bridges does a great job in it. I enjoyed it.
All right.
So, all right, something new. This is where we talk about a new movie or recent movie that we've both seen and have a proposal that we want to offer. So, Josh, first tell them what the movie is and a brief description.
Okay, so this is Hell or High Water, and I kept hearing about this film all year, or ever since it came out, I guess midsummer, and I've been dying to see it. Finally saw it recently. Chris Pine, who you know from Star Trek, Ben Foster, Jeff Bridges. The story is a divorced father and his ex-con older brother resort to a desperate scheme of robbing banks in order to save their family's ranch in West Texas.
Yeah, it's a very West Texas. Like, the setting is critical to the whole vibe of the movie and the plot and all that. So what's your proposal?
Okay, my proposal is I propose Hell or High Water is one of the best depictions of fatherhood on the big screen.
Wow. So you are sticking to this fatherhood thing.
Yeah, I gotta run through. So
okay, I can't wait to pick that apart.
You want to give yours?
Yeah. Okay. So my proposal is a little less sentimental. I propose that Hell or High Water is an anti-blockbuster with blockbuster acting.
Ah.
So, and I actually mean that as a compliment, that it's an anti-blockbuster. It just doesn't fit the mold of what we've come to think of as a blockbuster movie.
Yeah.
I actually was watching it, I was thinking, how did this get made today? Because it doesn't have any of the hallmarks of a really wide release, financially successful movie.
It was very simple. Not much happens.
Yeah, it's simple. It's not flashy. The ending is not what audiences really get excited about.
Right.
It's an emotional story, and it's visceral, but it's not glamorous. It's not sexy. It's not fun. It's a deep, thoughtful, nuanced storytelling and script, but it's a really well-made movie. I was just like, wow, I can't believe in today's Hollywood this still gets made.
I was listening to the screenwriter, who is Taylor Sheridan, who also wrote Sicario, and apparently he was an actor in it's the television show where it's the biker gangs, Anarchy, Sons of Anarchy. Sons of Anarchy.
I have not seen it.
All right, biker gangs. Apparently, this guy he hates acting, but he decided to change careers and get into writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, he says he likes simple stories, simple plots, so he can delve into the characters, which is a lot of times, that's not a blockbuster film.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's very evident in this movie, because one thing I was surprised by, the moment the movie starts, action. Like, you are right in the midst of the action. I thought, oh, okay, because they could have composed the storytelling differently, where you get all the backstory first before you hit the action, but they jump you right into the middle of the action, then you kind of piece together why they're doing what they're doing, which was brilliant storytelling. But it's so cerebral and interesting in its character development and nuanced, and it is a sign of a really good writer and thoughtful storytelling, but that's not what you find these days very often.
Right. And I've become a fan of this guy because you have not seen Sicario,
No.
right? That's the one with Emily Blunt, Benicio del Toro, Josh Brolin. It has to do with Mexican drug cartel and I think I don't know if it's FBI or something like that. And very suspenseful. Once again, dealing with a character and just she's getting thrown into a new world of suspense and terror and the surprises that come with it and how she reacts to it, because you're riding along with her and it's the emotional ride of seeing something you've never experienced before. And I think here with Hell or High Water, and this kind of goes to my proposal. I mean, here's a dad. He's a failed husband and father.
This is Chris Pine's character. And he has two boys who are teenagers. He's not there for them. And he's failed, right? And so he's gotten to the point, and there's a line in the movie where he says, basically, poverty is a disease that goes from generation to generation, but not anymore, not for my boys. And so he's motivated to do something, the only thing he thinks he's capable of doing, which is robbing these banks so that he can pay off this land, and then there's... Yeah, and there's a really interesting subplot going on where the bank has really screwed his family. and so he feels justified in going and robbing the same bank because of their nefarious activities. It's a story for our times where big business kind of screws the little guy.
Right, because they're robbing banks. So in the beginning of the film, you think, okay, these are the bad guys.
Right.
They got ski masks and guns, and they are violent. And but the bad guys in the movie are the institutions, the government, and the banks. And so they're literally stealing from the banks and then paying the banks back to buy the land, using the bank's money to pay it off, which I thought was clever. But going back to my proposal, here's a guy who, because what's entertaining about movies is they take a simple truth and they put it in an extreme situation, and if you can relate to it, even in this extreme situation, I think it can be a success. And so I related to it as a father, where, I don't think of myself as a failed father, but I do doubt myself at times and disappointed, in myself as a father sometimes. And I understand the feelings of how much I want to give to my kids. And so here's a guy who has literally told his son in the film, "Don't be like me."
Yeah.
And you're going to hear bad things about me. They're all true. Don't do it. Don't be like me. And so his whole goal is to get his kids out of poverty, being the one thing he can do to provide for his kids, willing to risk his life to do it.
Okay. So do you think he was doing it the right way?
Well,
because okay, I think it's noble for a father to want to break the cycle of poverty that his family for generations has been trapped in, and to release his own kids from that. Totally admirable, love it. But to do it in such a dishonorable way.
Yeah, let me clarify. I'm not saying he's a good dad. I'm saying I relate to the feelings. Now, the choice he made of robbing a bank, yes, don't rob banks as a father. That is a bad idea.
Well, and that's what was throughout the movie. Morality is incredibly ambiguous.
Yes,
because, like we said, the banks are culpable because they've been unethical in what they've done. The response of this dad and his older brother is very unethical to then, therefore, rob the banks.
Right.
Their attorney, who they go to kind of help them out, is
encouraging it.
He's a scoundrel also.
Yeah.
And then part of the plan is to kind of launder the money once they've stolen it, is to take it to an Indian casino and trade it in for poker chips, and then eventually trade those poker chips back in for cash. And you're like, okay, you're dealing with an Indian casino, which is a cultural element that is just multi-layered with sin. In that, why are there Indian casinos? Because Europeans stole the land from Indians, they made them poor, drove them to alcoholism, and then felt bad, so they gave them casinos to give them some kind of economic leg up, which in itself creates a new form of poverty. And so you're like, my goodness, this is such a...
It's messed up.
It's a black hole of depravity. And it only gets worse because his older brother is kind of a psycho and ends up, doing some even more horrible things. So it's really hard to look at these cast of characters and all that they're doing and going, all right, who's really the admirable person here, except perhaps the Texas Ranger, who's played by Jeff Bridges.
Yeah. Who's a racist, but that's another story.
Who's a racist, but a racist with a heart of gold.
That's right.
Right? As I roll my eyes. That's one of the things I think is brilliant about this movie is all of the ambiguities. And so you're right. You have a father who's trying to do right by his kids, but he feels his only options are to do right by doing wrong.
Right, and that's the hopelessness he feels. People without any hope will go to desperate measures, and that's what he's doing. So obviously I would never recommend doing that, but I just think the situation everyone is in, and going back to the Indian casinos, they say, white men stole from the Indians, and now banks are stealing from, the white men. And so there's, like you said, this black hole, this cycle. And so it's what happens in these, when you can take people that you can relate to based on, being a father or something like that, and put them in these extreme situations. And like the older brother, he says in the movie, he says, no one ever gets away with anything. And then the younger brother asks him, well, why are you doing this? And the older brother says, because you asked me to. And once again, that's just a demonstration of love or brotherly friendship and that sort of thing. Which those themes, going to the racist sheriff, like his partner is half Indian, half Mexican, and all day Jeff Bridges is throwing these racist comments at him,
jokingly, but nonetheless inappropriately.
Right. And anywhere else, he couldn't get away with it, but his friend understands they're buddies, and he gets like you rolled your eyes when he said heart of gold, but he really does. I mean, he really cares about his friend, and so it's because it's nuanced, because it's gray. That's what makes it interesting, I think.
Yeah, and little spoiler alert, I won't get into the nitty-gritty of how the movie ends, but because of that line earlier in the movie, the older brother says, "I've never seen anybody get away with anything. Like, everybody gets caught." There's almost this anticipation that they're going to get busted by the end of this movie. And this Jeff Bridges character, the Texas Ranger, is hot on their trail, and he's kind of figured out what they're doing. And even the ending, though, they get caught, but they don't at the same time. It's ambiguous again. And there was a part of me as the movie is coming to an end, you're like, oh no, don't let the credits roll. Don't let the credits roll. Don't let the credits roll. Like, I want more closure. I want more closure. And there isn't. Right. But all that to say, it's still a really, really smartly written, brilliantly acted, compelling movie. It was great. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. I'd see it again.
Yeah, me too. So we're both on board with our proposals, which is cool. So you have something borrowed related to this movie.
So this is an article from The Wrap, and it's a short article. They're interviewing Taylor Sheridan, the screenwriter, and the title of it is basically his film captures the pulse of rural, small-town America that led to Donald Trump getting elected. So what I didn't watch this movie and think about the election or Trump or anything like that. But then when I read this article, it's interesting to hear this guy's perspective, which is basically this is his kind of neck of the woods, and it's an area that is forgotten.
Wait, his neck of the woods, the writer of the movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
not the writer of the article.
Sorry. Yeah. So Taylor Sheridan. So I guess he grew up in those areas, and he sees how people are struggling financially. The average income is, $30,000 a year. There's not opportunity for kids to grow up and continue to live in those hometowns, and so it's a desperate situation. And so, his argument is, people, they're just regular people who are misunderstood by the media and so forth, and people like them led to voting to someone like Donald Trump. Like desperate times call for desperate measures, kind of thing.
Hell or high water.
Right.
Rock in a hard place.
There you go.
Yeah. It's an interesting exploration of that. I mean, the article gets into the way liberal elites, particularly on the coasts, tend to diminish or stereotype everybody in the flyover states as redneck, country bumpkin, illiterate, ignorant people. And this humanizes them. This movie humanizes the stories of struggle and poverty in those areas, recognizing, frankly, a lot of the argument that's been made for urban poverty, or African American poverty in certain communities, where a lot of people want to make the argument, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's your own fault. You need to do better for yourself. And then others argue, no. There's a system that is keeping them down. There is systemic injustice in education and in finance and in loans and job opportunities, and you can't ignore that. And you see the exact same thing going on here. When they talk about poverty in the movie, the argument is, it's not that we're lazy white trash, it's that there are systems, including this bank, which is nefarious and unethical, that keep us locked in these horrible conditions. And as the article brings out, there's an interesting similarity between poverty in a rural American setting and poverty in an urban setting. But cultural elites don't want to equate those things. They want to say, no. If there's poverty in the city, that's almost noble, and that deserves our attention, and that's a worthy cause. But rural poverty, well, that's just riffraff. Those, because they don't share their same political views, and therefore they're discounted. So I think it's worth a discussion.
There's a great scene where the sheriff and his partner are having dinner, and they go to a restaurant, and all they serve is T-bone steak and baked potato, and that's it. That's the only thing on the menu.
And corn. Wasn't there corn?
No. She said, "What do you not want? Do you not want the corn? Do you not want the green beans?" So you can't have corn. You can't have green beans. The only thing you can have is the T-bone steak and baked potato. And she referenced back in 1983, some Yahoo from New York came in and asked for trout. And that's the only time anyone's ever asked for something that's not on the menu. And I think that was a small jab at people on the East Coast or liberal thinking or whatever it might be. But I didn't pick up on that when I saw it. I just thought it was a funny scene. But after reading this article, it makes it interesting to have that perspective.
Yeah, worth thinking about when you watch this movie for sure. Okay, we did old, we did new, we did borrowed. Let's wrap up with something blue. This is a segment where we briefly share something that either blew our minds or that blew chunks that we saw recently. So, what have you got, Josh?
Okay, I got blew my mind. So, keeping in line with the theme of fatherhood, have you seen Midnight Special?
No.
Michael Shannon, who played General Zod.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, this great. I think I got 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, but I don't think it did great in the box office. A lot of great actors in it. Mm-hmm. Adam Driver.
Another weird
Kylo Ren, he's in it. I won't try to remember everyone in it, but there's a lot of great actors in it.
Midnight Special.
I haven't
even heard of it.
So there's Michael Shannon, his son, who's probably 8, 9, or 10, has special powers. And it starts out, there's a cult, think of a cult, who are looking at this kid as their savior. The government is looking at this kid as a potential weapon. Mm-hmm. And the father just wants to save his son. And so the chase is on. The cult is trying to get the son. The government's trying to get the son. And the father's just trying to protect the son.
Okay.
And so it's all...
How old is the kid?
8, 9, or 10,
okay,
something
so
like that.
It's not Adam Driver.
Right, he's a boy.
No. Okay.
Right, yeah. Adam Driver is a analyst.
Whatever. So
he connects with the boy.
So it blew your mind.
It did. It was great. It's a sweet film. It is kind of like in line with what you were saying, blockbuster acting, but not a blockbuster film. Mm-hmm. There are some I would call blockbuster moments in it, but it's a very simple story with great acting. And once again, there's just that theme of what a father would do or what a parent would do for their child.
Does Michael Shannon end up robbing banks?
No, but he does break the law in the name of
protecting his kid.
Yeah, he doesn't rob banks, but I think he definitely breaks the law in this movie.
Okay.
They do some bad stuff to protect the son.
All right, I see this theme for you. I'm worried about
where
you're heading here. You're gonna go into the school and break bad on one of the teachers.
I'm also a big fan of Batman Begins. I'm not gonna be a vigilante anytime soon, though, either. So.
Could happen.
So once again, you bring something noble and heartfelt and virtuous, and I've got something horrible.
All right.
That blew my mind. So I mentioned I was flying back from Thailand, and these super long intercontinental flights, and they have every seat has a TV screen, and you can scroll through hundreds of television programs and movies to pass the time. And so I watched 8 movies over the course of these flights.
So jealous.
Yeah, sitting in coach for 16 hours from Chicago to Hong Kong is just...
not that part.
Yeah. Anyway, so at one point I pretty much watched what I really wanted to watch, and then I'm just scrolling through trying to find anything, and I stumbled upon this movie that I watched the trailer for, and I thought, okay, whatever, I'll pass the time I watch it. And I'm sorry for the Chinese woman who was in the seat next to me. Both because I probably should have eaten something else before I got on the plane, but also because I was laughing so loudly during this movie. And, everyone wears headphones, so you can't hear what everyone's laughing at. But anyway, it's a little tiny independent movie called What We Do in the Shadows. And it's from New Zealand, and the 2 directors are Jermaine Clement, who's a guy from Flight of the Conchords.
Okay.
And Taika Waititi, who's New Zealander, and he's actually now directing the new Thor Ragnarok movie.
Really?
Yeah. And they're both actors in the movie. So here's the setup. It's a mockumentary about 4 vampires who share a flat in Wellington, New Zealand. And they're all like a couple hundred years old, but they have the same mundane problems as normal roommates would. So like the movie begins with the sort of responsible dandy of the vampire group waking everybody up at 6 o'clock at night and it's really odd. And they all dress like they're in the 19th century still, but then they have to have a meeting because one of the guys isn't doing the dishes, and that's like his job to do the dishes. And then they pan over to the dishes in the sink, and they're all like covered in blood. And it's, I mean, there's language in there. There's some inappropriate stuff. It's not family friendly, but oh my goodness, it is hysterically funny. I could not believe how funny this movie was. And like they have a rivalry with the werewolves in town, and the werewolves, they're like trying to be all these cool guys, and you know they use foul language, and then the head of the werewolves goes, "Hey, we're werewolves, not swearwolves." You know, I couldn't. It was so brilliantly done and hysterically funny that it made all those hours sitting in coach almost tolerable.
I'm checking it out.
Yeah, you got to check it out. It really was. It's got 96% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, surprising, stumbled upon. I'm sure other people have heard of it. It was really, really creatively done. Okay, so that's our episode. Tell us what you thought about Hell or High Water or any of the other movies that we mentioned. We should have mentioned Hell or High Water is up for Best Picture.
It is.
In the Oscars. And Best Screenplay.
Okay, and Arrival is in the list, which someone commented we need to screen Arrival and talk about that one.
I actually really want to watch that. I think it's available now on iTunes.
It's back in theaters for sure. It's probably on iTunes.
Yeah, so that will probably be... We'll probably take a look at that maybe for the next episode. So thanks for joining us. Do us a huge favor and leave us feedback on iTunes. Like rate us on iTunes because that helps other people find the podcast. And then you can always get more of my content at skyjatani.com, and you can get more of Josh.
Well, my wife wanted me to. She's like, Josh, you never promote anything.
Yeah.
So besides talking about movies, I help people do retirement planning. So you can go to Primerica.com/Joshua Lindsay and find me there. So
all right. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, you can kiss this episode goodbye.
Don't swear.
Sorry,
We're werewolves.
Not
What are we?
werewolves, not swearwolves.